You know, when I see something as incredible as this, I think to myself, I wish things were the way they used to be, because nothing's the same anymore. Living and being close to the canals it's a privilege, because it arcs back. This incredible corridor arcs back many generations. Many generations have resided here, many generations have passed through, and I'm honoured to say that I'm a part of that. And maybe those of you watching are also a part of that and probably don't realise it. But when I first moved on board, I wasn't prepared for how it was going to affect me. How has it affected me, I hear you ask? Well, it's affected me both positively and profoundly. The incredible infrastructure around it, the history, all of that. Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. I live on board a 57-foot Heron manufactured in Huddersfield in 2001. Giving up bricks and mortar in 2015 for a fresh start and a new life on the water. And what did we give up? A beautiful but modest lakeside property with a jacuzzi, an annex, a gym and a cinema. And do we look back? Well, no we don't, because life on the water is far simpler and much more gentler. In fact, I refer to it as the gentle life. So why don't you come and join Levi and Diesel and I and my beautiful wife as our journey continues into 2025. Yes, the gentle life. But we all know, don't we, that in the reality of it all, on days like these, there are always caveats to the gentler sides of life. Here we go then, just a few precautions that you should consider taking if you're out on the canal, cruising or static, just floating. Just make sure that you follow just a few guidelines, a few principles, a few goals going forward into 2025. Like the method in which you step on and off your boat. We hear stories, don't we, about how people have fallen in at lock chambers. I saw a video recently of a really nice couple that lived on board. Maybe they still do, I hope they do. And the lady of the boat unfortunately fell in at a lock chamber and was caught up in the rudder. There are many distractions along the canal corridor. This old lockhouse, for example. I'll explain as we go along. Simple things to remember: stepping on and off the boat, as I've just mentioned, trying to maintain 3 points of contact when you do. And obviously when you jump off the boat, make sure that the gear stick is firmly in neutral. You don't want to fall off your boat, slip between the wall of your boat on the starboard or port sides. The consequences of such an action simply do not bear thinking about. Naturally, the best weather gear is essential. Make sure that you're not wearing Wellington boots. If you do slip into the water, they're going to fill up fairly quickly. Remember, it's going to be icy cold in there as well. So all precautionary measures you must take before you even consider uncoupling from your mooring and setting off in conditions such as these. It looks absolutely beautiful, stunningly so, even in winter on days like these. But just remember, at locks, the water is much deeper. For myself, some of the precautions I have to take are that I've got 2 dogs. So when I am in the lock, I've either got 1 dog on the boat or both dogs on the boat, depending on what the wife is doing. Occasionally I'll let a dog off, to do their business, as you'd expect if you're on the move and you're moving about. But with all that being said, making sure that they're on their leads, harnessed up, and they've got their own life jackets if it's important to do that. If you're infirm yourself, you're not quite dexterous or capable in some way, just make sure that your dog is secure again as you're getting on and off the boat, because as I've said, those 3 points of contact may be very important for you, and it's something that you should never forget when getting on and off the boat. Locks. Locks are not complicated, but people can be. Seeking advice for safety's sake is the best advice. On this flight where I am today, there is no boat movements, and one can expect that, particularly with the canal all frozen up. That's a fair indicator which should tell you, try not to navigate in conditions such as these. You may damage your boat. You may, as you're going by moored boats, because you're breaking the ice, damage their boats also. Remember, insurance claims can be commonplace in situations like that. Some boaters do it, but what I recommend that you don't do is you follow suit and do the same. Just as when you're passing moored boats, you don't go at speed, you show the necessary respect. You go at tick over speed. Some people might be sleeping, some people just want to relax. The last thing they want when a boat goes by is they don't want big ooh, you know, they don't want to be thrown about. You know, it is meant to be a simple life, a gentle life. Most people treat it as such. You know, you can still have a laugh while you're doing it. You can come out and cruise. Again, you've got the right gear on. Depends what sort of boat you've got. I've got a cruiser stern, so my cruiser stern is quite large, as a lot of you know watching the channel regularly will know that. So some boats like tradbacks, they're great because they might have a log burner right at the back of the boat, so that they're standing like it in the well, and they're getting like the updraft of heat, so it's keeping them warm. So I'm not saying that I made a mistake, but I'm not bothered. I'll cruise all year round. Currently held up at a marina at the moment for a number of reasons, but if I had it my way, I'd be out here all the time, because just look at it. It looks amazing. Wow, I love it. At locks, it's very important that you take your time. Do not be pressured by anyone. Fresh air, out of the boat, out of the house. Absolutely. So the gentleman behind me that's fishing has just said, after I asked him, I said, any luck? He said, nothing yet. He said, but I'm in the fresh air, out of the house. And I just said to him, absolutely. Fantastic. It is. It's incredible. You know, get a walk going, you know, get the blood flowing. You know, it's all right being trussed up on your boat or in your house, but a good walk with some nice warm clothes and you're laughing. And look, after such horrendous conditions at the start of the week, this is the first week of January, or we're heading into the second week of January now, 2025. We had a year's worth of rain in an hour at the beginning of the week, 7th of January, followed by this -6 last night, and temperatures are set to plummet again into the weekend. But by the 14th of January, they're set to rise back to 12 degrees during the day and 8 degrees at night. Fantastic. So when you're out there, when you're around the lock chambers, particularly the ones at height, just make sure you look for the signage, check, and if necessary, do a little bit of training of how to conduct yourself around locks when navigating along the canals. Go on the CRT website. They do some fantastic videos on safety and how to conduct yourselves. Specifically, they've pointed this video around locks. And if the point of your visit to the canals is for leisure, then everything is at 2.3 miles per hour. Any faster, and find another mode of transport, like 125 miles an hour on the other side of that wall. Okay, let's close this video out by giving you a little bit more advice about how to behave around a lock. First up, your windlass. This is your best friend at the lock. Pay attention. Starting at the ground paddle end at the higher portion of the canal, and before the boat enters the lock, we have to make sure that the water levels are consistent both inside the lock chamber and on the canal adjacent. It's looking all good, although a slight adjustment has to be made. That being said, we're just going to do a quick survey of the ground around the lock and everything looks pretty safe. Okay, so it's nice and casual. Look, onto the spindle and release the ratchet and raise the paddle. Keep control of the windlass at all times whilst doing this until the paddle is fully raised, and then clip back the securing ratchet. Walking away from the paddle, I'll be doing the same thing on the opposite side. As you can see, it's raised there also. Checking the water levels are both equal in the lock chamber and on the canal outside. I'm going back across now to lower the paddle. So taking control of the windlass on the spindle, making sure the ratchet is put back, lower the paddle. Do not let the paddle drop, otherwise you will damage the paddle. Make sure that you keep control of it throughout. Put the ratchet back and proceed to the other side and complete the process. So now water levels are equal inside and out. We put our back to the white portion of the balance beam and gently push back. Now, in the absence of a boat, I shall be a little bit creative here, but needless to say, ordinarily one would get an acknowledgement from the helm, and then the helmsman will bring the boat successfully into the lock. And it's important to remember that you stay organised at the lock. You don't need to keep going from one side of the lock chamber to the other to drop paddles. Develop your own style and try to be as efficient as possible. So I'm dropping the paddle this side, obviously putting my windlass onto the spindle and closing off the ratchet. My windlass that you can see in my hand, I've had for 10 years and it hasn't gone in the canal yet. So hypothetically, the boat would be in. I would have acknowledged the helm. The helmsman would have brought the boat into the lock, and at this point, using the balance beam, I return the lock gate back. Thus, point to remember: do not rush. And make sure that you acknowledge every action you are about to make with the helmsman. It has to be mutually agreed before there's any further action. Lock safety, essential information. Make sure you check everywhere before you proceed through the lock. Check for signage for any local hazards. This is the basic lock configuration of the chamber featured in this segment. Signage such as the seal marker, this is a very important thing to remember. It is very important that the back of your boat, the stern, does not overhang that sign. Stay well clear of the seal marker because it can capsize your boat. The consequences of such an action simply do not bear thinking about. This is what could happen, although situations like this are very rare. It's a consideration when you're inside a lock chamber. The lock is now full. We can move on to the next step. And for the purpose of having to demonstrate this video further, I'm going to go slightly back in time. And in peak season at this lock, this is what you would usually come to expect. A boat coming out and then a boat going into the lock chamber. Efficiency in action. Once the boat is inside the chamber, the gentleman with his windlass on the spindle, agreeing and acknowledging the helm, will then raise the paddle and release the water to allow the boat down to the next level. Please agree with the helmsman the consistency of how you release the water from the lock. Raising the paddle slowly to allow the helmsman to control the boat inside the lock chamber is one way of doing that. Now, once the boat has dropped to the bottom of the chamber, it's then important to check what the water's doing on the other side of the lock. If it's looking less turbulent and settled, there's your good indicator that you can now open the lock gates. And there you go, lock gates released, boat happily on its way. Both the windlass user and the helmsman have agreed. that all conditions are normal on the other side of the bridge and the boat proceeds normally. All done. Make sure that you shut the gates, drop the paddles, that's very important that you do. There you are, look, that's the condition of the lock when you should leave it, all secure. Well, Nigel, I hear you ask, where are you going to next on the canal system? Well, it's on the sign, Lichfield, the Lichfield and Atherton Canal Restoration Programme. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you did this with your favourite narrowboating channel, I'm sure that they would appreciate it just as much as I do. Thanks very much for watching my video. I'll see you all again in the next one. Take care.